Tobago on Tobago Updates viewers. Well, we had a very, very interesting day yesterday. We knew that the Chief Secretary was going to go to the House and he was going to provide us with some explanations. We knew that he was going to make a very strong and clear statement. What we did not expect was the level of bombshells that he dropped yesterday and the allegations that he made. Some serious, serious allegations that implicates all people all the way up to the head of this country. And joining us on set this morning to discuss these things, we have Mr. Gerry Macfarlene, a former assemblyman and someone very famous in the space. Good morning and welcome to you.
Thanks for your warm compliments. I'm blushing.
It's so wonderful to have you on set this morning. Now, I mean, after hearing yesterday's statement from the Chief Secretary, what were your initial reactions?
Well, as you said, it's a bombshell and nobody expected that. You were hearing talk about that kind of interaction that was happening within the space, from the time that the Watson Duke separated itself from the party and the other members of the assembly. You're hearing all sorts of talk and all sorts of developments that were taking place. Mm-hmm. But we didn't expect that level of seriousness. And based on what was described yesterday, I think it's certainly a scandal of sort of serious proportions, and you just can't just take this thing lightly, and I just concerned about the comment by the Prime Minister where he talked about fancy fabrication, a serious thing like that, I mean, this thing is supposed to be investigated thoroughly, and I would expect that, we find a way to avoid these kind of things in the future. I mean, these things, people plot against political parties, continue to plot against one another by doing all sorts of nefarious things and maybe all sorts of acceptable things, but this one, I think, especially where it was recorded, it really implicates a number of persons, and it's not good for politics, it's not good for governance, and it imputes improper motives with a number of persons involved in this thing, and not just ordinary persons, but people in serious political positions in this country.
Now, do you think that there was any truth to what was said in the House?
You mean about the report? About
yes. About all the allegations?
Yeah, I think some of it most likely have some truth in it, and that is what is worrying. But you have to understand politics and politicians, I myself being one, and sometimes not all politicians come out and tell you exactly what the facts are, There are very few who have done it like me, so just spill the truth and get over it. I apologize and you promise not to make that happen again. Not many people do that. And so I wasn't surprised that the Prime Minister actually said that, he did know the person and that sort of thing. So I can't doubt him. All of us have field memory from time to time, So we would like to see that, people change their attitude and this kind of devious plotting, if is that what was the intention, that people should stay away from that sort of thing and get down to serious governance. I'm saddened by this, and I feel that, we should move above that level of politicking and campaigning. The election is over. We have a couple of years again to deal with governing Trinidad and Tobago and the governance of Tobago. We should get down to serious business, get down to the issue of the Tobago Autonomy Bill, and that will put the whole different light on the situation and make it even difficult for people to plot like that, to damage the THA. So we know specifically what are the responsibilities of the THA, what are the clear responsibilities of the government, and what responsibility the THA have to carry out government policy in Tobago, and what are these prescribed responsibilities for the THA, some which is in the legislation but is not being practiced, or the responsibility not given to the THA. These are some of the big issues that we need to address here in Tobago.
Mm-hmm. Do you think we've gone so far?
It really went too far. As I said, it is a scandal, and you can't get away from that. And it has to be investigated. And when you see the level of of police involvement in the investigation of the audio tape. You know, I mean, maybe the whole police service should have to be coming to Tobago to investigate this, because it's a much serious issue than an audio tape and people discussing something, you know, which I find is minuscule to what it was reported yesterday. You know, so I don't know, and people seem to have not have the trust in the police service to do justice to this allegation, you know, as deep-seated as it is, and the level of conspiracy that took place, especially as reported, based on the information that is reported. I don't have any other information to describe this thing as scandalous, and I really would like to see how the police will handle this, or the DPP for that matter, will handle this situation and moving forward.
And what's interesting is that yesterday, after, you know, ducking the media in local terms, we saw the commissioner of police come out within a couple hours of the statements and make a very scripted statement. She didn't say much. We also had Mr. Wendell Lucas, who's the head of the White Collar Division, also adding a piece and saying that he's going to continue the investigation into the audio gate scandal, but they made no mention of whether or not they would investigate some of the claims that were made. And there are even other things related to that was brought to the fore beforehand that we're not seeing those investigations for.
Yeah, and that tells you that the police seems to be taking political instructions. That is what comes across. Many of the political or the people in the media that I've spoken to about this yesterday, we had many discussions with many media persons and political scientists and so on, and all of us are convinced that it was political instructions from someone high up that gave the police these instructions or insisted that they operate in this particular way. It's a very high-handed approach to this Emailgate investigation. So you'll wonder how much this thing will be covered up. This new scandal will be covered up, and it's clear that they were instructed to make these statements yesterday, you know, and there's a similar thread in all the statements, you know, and so you wonder whether maybe it's the same author, you know, or the same person who instructed, you know, the thing to be done. That is how it came across to a lot of us in the media yesterday, you know, and I share that view as well.
Certainly. And then also when you look at the arrest warrants that was presented in the House, because Mr. Augustine took some time to go through those, and there were so many errors that came up in terms of even, you know, the employment of certain individuals and that sort of thing to, in a way, invalidate the arrest warrants that was presented to them.
Yeah, and it shows a couple of things. First, it shows that they were not, is a thing that was rushed or hustled. I don't know if it was after I don't know how soon the decision was given to them to do this thing, but it was hustled, not proper research was done, not proper information gathered to generate the kind of evidence you want to go to a magistrate, to a judicial person and say, listen, I am swearing to an affidavit that this thing is what is happening and we want a warrant to go and search this person's premises, and you have 40-something warrants to be executed on different persons on the island. It was rushed. It was not well researched. Not enough information was gathered to build up the necessary evidence to go before a magistrate or a judge to say you want this thing done. You know, and it questions whether the man falsely declared a false declaration to the judge on whether this is so or not. You know, maybe he could be charged, maybe. You know, if all this information was so poorly provided in the document to be executed. So you swear to a judge that you want to go and search this person because of A, B, and C, and half of the information is not correct. You know, it's very embarrassing to the police service.
And it also opens up the police service to litigation.
Yes, sure. I'm sure that, for example, the information that was provided in the warrant for the former chief administrator, it is clear. And the type of person I know she to be, she wouldn't resist taking the matter further legally, you know, to protest the situation and the incorrect information that was on the warrant, you know, and about her employment and the period of which she was employed and so on, and giving the impression that she was employed by or appointed by the public, by the THA. The whole thing was so rushed. It serves as an embarrassment to the police service.
But if you listen to Mr. Wendell Lucas at the head of the White Collar Division yesterday, he stated that the officers acted with integrity and they did their job and they're going to continue doing their job.
I totally disagree with that. They were instructed to do the job how they did it. I could understand that. If he said that, I would agree with him. Have this excessive force use, and it was clearly designed to embarrass or insult or give the public a certain impression that this thing was so serious that you have to have so many dozens of policemen in this exercise to execute all these warrants and so on. I understand they have to do some more today again. What is all this about? If you have warrants to be executed, you come in a decent way, and that is a decent way of how the police operate. It questions Mr. Lucas' integrity himself, his integrity, And so, you see, when people advise the police or the people in authority who have certain responsibility to do things in this rush way, this is how it comes across to the public. And I said on another occasion recently, if you have to deliver justice, justice must not only be done, but more importantly, it must appear to be done. You do the thing right, and sometimes you have to do the thing right and proper. It may take a little longer, but still do it right and do it properly. And people respect you for that.
Now, the minority leader said that, for one thing, he disagreed with what was said in the House. But he said that the real issue is that audio clip and that allegation that, the chief secretary was conspiring to use public funds to spread propaganda. Are we straying away from that point? Or, how should that compare to what was said yesterday?
The audio tape, in my view, is my personal opinion and view. The audio tape is not even a storm in a teacup. It's a stir in a teacup, if you want to call me. And so I don't see the big issue about that. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not even one of the Bush variety. But at the same time, we can't. This to me is two people discussing something, and these discussions go on in all political parties and governments from the time I've been involved in politics. I know all that kind of discussion that take place. This one was audio taped, and somebody leaked it to the media and so on, and they make a big issue of it and so on, and they say, well, it's conspiracy and all this sort of thing, and as long as you conspire or you agree to conspire, they find it's a charge and so on. You can't find a way in which it was agreed to. It was not implemented. It was maybe discussed. The chief secretary said they discussed all things about these matters and so on, and how to deal with this thing in the future. They never allowed that to be the practice which they have adopted and so on. Nobody was employed to do such a thing. So I have no reason to doubt the chief secretary, So I just feel that it's a storm in a teacup, and they're using this as a distraction for all the other issues that have been highlighted nationally and in Tobago in particularly.
Should the chief secretary handle the situation in the way that he did yesterday, bringing it to the House, or should he have gone through some other medium to get his story out or to address the public?
I think when you do it in the House, you have some protection. You kind of, not impossible, but it's kind of difficult to take. You have some protection in the House, privileges in the House when you do it in the House. In the Parliament, you notice sometimes people will say things in the Parliament under the protection of the Parliament, and other persons will say, well, listen, you say this inside, you go outside and say that, and you'll see what I'll do, So there's some protection in the House, and Fali feel that maybe that's the best way to go, to let the public see, well, this is a statement I'm making, this is the information that I have, this is what was recorded, this is what was said, this is all the information, and that is what makes the whole thing a scandal, in my view.
And do you see any parallels to what's happening today, or over the past couple of weeks, I should say, what's happening to that of what happened when Mr. A.N.R. Robinson was Prime Minister?
Parallel in what respect?
In terms of it being a coup.
Oh, well, there's no parallel with that, really, but there's certain things that led up to the coup, and there's certain things that that was said by certain persons in the protective services before the coup and even during the coup. It reminded me of that in that sense. But I remember the day of I'm not too sure if it was the coup, the coup, when he was talking about a lot of things about corruption in the PNM on that day in Parliament and so on, and then that is where the attempted coup started. I mean, people feel that, you shouldn't bring back all these things that happened in the past. And it's, that to me, without my memory, if I remember carefully, that led up to the attempted coup because people were prompting and getting upset with Robinson at the time, who wanted to let the population remember, the Jean Miles issue and all these other issues that was swept under the carpet. I mean, the way they treated Jean Miles. I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, these are serious, the lock joint issue. All those are things that the present generation may not even recall or don't even know about. But there were serious corruption issues practiced by the previous administration before Robinson came into power, that the population felt ashamed that it should be discussed in Parliament, and a lot of resistance, and even within the police service and even into the protective services. And that, led to the Jamat, taking the course of action which it did. So people have to be careful what they do. And this is a country, Trinidad and Tobago. When you talk the truth, sometimes people take it to court for that. And sometimes they even win you through some loophole and that kind of thing, or because you can't get people to come and corroborate your evidence or your information that you have, and so on. So people have to be very careful. Getting justice in this place is not easy. You have to be brave. You have to stand up for it. You have to feel it. You have to want justice. And getting justice in some of these instances is not just getting justice for yourself, but setting a precedent that, things must change and people must have integrity in what they're doing. You do these things, you go to court, is to get a better system. People approach things differently. People operate at a certain level of integrity, and a compassion, an urge and a need to see justice, peace and justice to prevail in the society. And that's bringing me to the other point which I want to make, is that, these kind of things, you're hearing that Fali has the chief secretary, has another issue to come to the fore in whatever time he decides to bring that to the fore.
Yes.
And there are other plotters on the government side that they have other things planning as well to come and so on. Where this thing will really end? How long will they continue plotting to embarrass one another and so on? And that will lead up to the particular elections. One could understand the importance of the 2 seats in Tobago for the PNM, and they will try their best to do everything to ensure that the PNM come out of this political embarrassing situation where they were defeated 14-1. And so, you could understand they're trying their best to get back in the good graces of the population in Tobago. And one of the ways to do that is try as much as possible to embarrass the present administration. But how far and how long are we going to take or tolerate that kind of politics when there are so many other important issues to discuss? If these issues come up at election time, sometimes it's more important they come up before election time. But let us please have the kind of discussion with the THA and the government so that at least peace and respect will prevail, and then we could understand how we can move to get progress done. Without peace, without trust, you can't get things done because you always feel uncomfortable with each other. You hear the Prime Minister indicated that he don't want to have no discussion with Fali without a third party. That is sowing seeds of discord and distrust. And Fali going to say something else, that the Prime Minister is not to be trusted and that kind of thing. What we have to do is to move away from that. A lot of water under the bridge, the water still below the bridge, and the bridge still standing, but let us try to use the bridge to build a relationship between the THA and the Prime Minister, the head of the government in Trinidad and Tobago. To me, that is what is critically important.
But do you think that that can happen at this point in time, after everything that was said?
How you mean? I mean, you see governments in the past. I was a member of the assembly when we had problems with financing and so on. They used to there's a guy in finance, the ministry in Trinidad don't even want to talk to the THA and so on, to tell them how serious the situation was at that point in time in the Tobago House of Assembly. And I talked to Dinoon, who was the chairman then, and said, listen, we have to go to Manning and talk to him straight about this, face to face, Chairman agreed. We called Manning straight away. Manning said, Chairman, let's do this. Let's come down. You want to come down or you want me to come up? He said, well, we said we will go down and meet him. That is Manning, who we battered in the election and so on. We beat them in the election, and so on. So he felt, listen, this is an opportunity. Really, let's build a better relationship and understand what's happening in Tobago. We went down, myself, Benedict Armstrong, who was deputy chairman, Alan Richards, who was the chief administrator. I think they called him clerk at that time. And we went down, we have a nice discussion, and we lay our case to Manning. After all this political bankering and so on that we had. And Manning said, listen, gentlemen, I didn't know this thing was so serious. We have to put a stop to this and understand what is happening. From that time, the situation improved financially with the situation between THA and the government. It lasts for a little while, but at the same time, we got to a point where people sat down like big men, serious people with their responsibilities and the people to please and satisfy, and had that discussion. And I'm saying what is so difficult, especially with a prime minister who born and grew here in this place, and a young, ambitious chief secretary who wants to serve the people in a particular way. Why the two of them can't sit down and have a serious discussion? If even you mean bringing other people to intervene, or the third party or fourth party to have a discussion, first to move forward. That is what is critical to me at this point in time. How long are you going to continue busting marks here, busting mark here, dropping a bombshell here, dropping a bombshell there, and what? And the police will come, and of course they will take the side of the government, who will instruct them what to do, when to do it, and with what kind of force. We have to move away from that kind of politicking and get down to serious business. And I'm saying peaceful, meaningful dialogue between the THA and the government to ensure that we move forward smoothly and put all these political storm in a teacup issues aside.
All right, now we're going to take a little break, but before we get into that break, I just want to, just voice this ad here before we go to a break for Papa B's Inn. So Papa B's Inn is available, and they are located at number 6 Scipio Trace in Canby, and they provide services for minibar, pool, massages, air-conditioned rooms, Wi-Fi, and the list goes on. And they have packages including $700 per couple, $1,000 per family, and $600 for a single unit. Breakfast and lunch available, and you can reach them at Papa B Tobago Blackman at gmail.com, and the numbers are 631-80838 or 768-7712. All right. And so we'll go to a quick break and we'll be back.
Wake up and hear me neighbor. 60,000 people strong, and the vibes is never wrong.
Back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates. Viewers, just before we get back into our conversation with Mr. Gerry Macfarlene, Dad's Auto Parts has a special for you. Located at Clark Trace and Signal Hill, currently offering a sale on all car parts. Dad's Auto Parts and Accessories is your neighborhood auto supply, from oils to batteries and everything in between. Dad's Auto is your go-to guy, so be sure and check them out. All right, so Mr. Macfarlene, the climate in Tobago has been so adversarial over the past few years. We've been using, since 2021, we've been using the word unprecedented quite a lot. And we're sort of wearing down that term right now in terms
What
of
should we use?
unprecedented. Started with a 6-6 situation and everything in between leading up to what happened yesterday. Like, do you see any positive changes happening within our space and where the people of Tobago could just breathe?
If I was closely associated with either the two parties, that is what I would have insist and pressed for. We just can't continue like this. We don't into a political season in Trinidad.
Yes.
But at the same time, we have to find middle ground. We have to find common areas of common interests and so on. If the two parties are seriously interested of serving the people, one is seriously interested of being Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago as a country, a Prime Minister who respects the agenda of the Tobago House of Assembly, and you try to work and understand what they want to do, provide them with the necessary support, provide them with the necessary authority to do a number of things, some of which are still not developed in the Act, bringing that to the Tobago House of Assembly, bring that to Parliament, let us work on it, have some agreement with the opposition for them to have the bill passed, as an act and have greater autonomy done for Tobago. That's a serious issue to be dealt with, But we need to develop the relationship first. We need to develop the trust, so that this thing could be done. And that is what I pray for and hope for every day.
Can the people of Tobago still trust in Chief Secretary Fally Augustine as a leader?
Boy, from what I'm seeing in the last few days, it has been a level of almost unprecedented support for the man outside the assembly. Hundreds of people gather shouting in favor of Fally. The meeting in WIM a few nights ago, Saturday night, I think.
Tuesday night.
Tuesday night, more than 1,000 people on the live feed. The place packed to capacity. People had to walk with their chairs and things, even outside to take in the meeting in WIM. That tells you something, that the people in Tobago, and there's historical precedence to this, people in Tobago don't like when a government try to impose its will on the people of Tobago. It happened when, I think, many times in the government in the past, the people always support the underdog, if you want to call it that. The might of the government against the people of Tobago, over the years, the people of Tobago frown on that, So I'm saying that is going to give Fally a lot of assets, for him to thrive on. And I hope he could use that wisely, especially at this time. A lot more people seem to be coming and understand the advantage that is being placed on him.
No, if there is that support, we're seeing, I shouldn't say if, but we're seeing that support. Do you think that the government is also seeing that support, so that everything that they've tried to say or try to paint a certain picture or set a narrative, if you want to use that term, no matter what, it has not eliminated the support that Mr. Augustine has received. Do you think that they are taking note of that?
Of course, the party is taking note of that. The PNM is not. PNM has been around for a long time. They're not foolish. They know. I can tell you that the party leadership had an idea of what the results of this last election in Tobago would have been, because of their work on testing the waters privately and publicly with different surveys and things that was being done. So they know, they have a feeling, they understand, and they know the importance of these two seats in the coming election, whenever that will be in the next 3 years, I think. They know the importance of these two seats. So they're trying their best at least to link part of his heritage, the Prime Minister, from Tobago, bring your Tobagoness to the platform, try to make peace. You might get better dividends on your suggestion. But we can't just continue to just blast Fally, embarrass Fally, use the police service, use things like you're not giving them permission to blast at the quarry, and it's when things get brought down by the airport project, all right, we'll give them because the airport project need material to crush, and so you're establishing water lines or whatever you're doing in Tobago. You come like if you're just boring yourself, the license officers and so on came and embarrassed Farley's wife and this kind of way. I mean, and what I'm saying that is an incident in which, Farley said, all right, his wife didn't have a driver's permit and so on with her, but the way you behave in treating the woman and getting the driver's permit to her and that kind of thing, more than bullied. And like if there was an attempt to embarrass, that is what we're getting the impression of. In the Manning days, people were brought and told, listen, let us have a better relationship with the THA. And we felt that Christopher Rowley, as Prime Minister from this island, he will have a much better approach. He knows the people more than Manning knows the people in Tobago. And he must have a more better approach to the assembly of developing a relationship, a working and meaningful relationship with the Tobago House of Assembly.
But do you think that he respects the fact that the THA is not run by his PNM counterparts here in Tobago?
There's a lot of political tabanka playing there. You can't get away from that. I know how they feel. 22 years or 20-something years, that they have been there and so on. And people felt that they were doing things that the population wasn't satisfied with. And the population decided what they want and who they want. One can understand you've been there holding on to the coffers and the authority and the positions in Tobago for 21 years. And they lose the election, And people look at that as well. The population say, well, listen, Prime Minister came across too crude and too hard on the population and so on. There are a number of things within the party and things that didn't work out well, Some party people were embarrassed, insulted. Some party people in Tobago was cussed out by the leadership of the thing in Tobago. So, I mean, people in the party, in the PNM, decided to vote against the PNM in some of these areas because they were vexed. And that issue with Kelvin Charles, a lot of people, even up to now, have not forgiven certain people in the party for that. How Kelvin Charles was treated. People up to now, I know people will tell you, I am a PNM, but I detested the way that was done. They didn't like it. And Kelvin Charles maybe was about to change the status quo, how things was done in the assembly. Contractors, particular contractors, I am told, who were getting 6 and 7 contracts, and other people of the very party wouldn't get in one, and Kelvin Charles decided to change that and make it a little more equitable, have more equity in these contracts or these small contracts that was done. That is one of the things that he get licks for. You can imagine that, So people in the party have frowned on that kind of thing, and that Kelvin Charles factor is a big thing still in the party. Keith Rowley's heavy-handed approach to the situation in Tobago have to be reviewed and looked at again if they want to make inroads here. The government ministers and so on need to understand that, listen, a better relationship is better in the long run, politically and administratively for the island.
And as you mentioned, the contracts and those issues, I mean, we're seeing where audits are happening into what happened under the last administration, the previous administration, as well as their contractors within the space that said that they would they would continue pushing hard to get what is owed to them, even though some of that work is questionable. There are grounds to question it. There's grounds for the audit to be going on at this point in time. And there also seems to be a bit of a status quo here in Tobago where some people feel that, only they can have access to these large contracts and so on, or they can have the biggest slice of the pie.
I am in this fortunate or unfortunate situation that I know a lot of these contractors, some of them quite well, and so on. I know the dilemma that the THA find itself. You could imagine the scandal that would have been if the THA decided to pay these people for work that they have not done, work that they have done poorly, work they have not done in keeping with the scope of works, work that they have not done in using the appropriate material which was agreed to, and all these things. You want to pay these people, and there's questions about it. And that's why I kind of have some respect for the last chief administrator, Who decided? See, in all of this, listen, I'm not going to ask our accounting or auditing people to look at this matter. I'm going to bring in a forensic audit. She took that decision to the Executive Council. The Executive Council agreed. Bring in a forensic auditor to investigate this thing and to see what is happening. And it's from that way the bacchanal start. But if Fali had went ahead and paid these people for work that they have not done or not done properly or exaggerated their invoices, and so on, that would have been another scandal in itself. So what people have to understand, listen, exercise some patience. I'm sure that these people will be paid eventually, but let the process take its course and let the Public Service Commission and all the necessary agencies go through the process and so on. They have taken a decision that based on what they have seen, that's the Public Service Commission. Based on the preliminary or first phase finding of the audit report, she took it upon herself to send it to the Public Service Commission. These are the findings of this audit report. The Public Service Commission, in its own decision, decided to suspend somebody because they feel that they've implicated in this matter. Suspend somebody from the Prime Minister's office, appears, in the Prime Minister's office. The Public Service Commission did that. Fali had nothing to do with that. And the Chief Administrator had nothing to do with that. But except that the Public Service Commission saw that there was merit in this thing. But nobody here talking about that, Nobody, but of course, it causes embarrassment to the Prime Minister in particular, especially since the PS was in his office. It tells you a little bit about some of the independence of the Public Service Commission that had to be observed and understood and respected. But I am saying that I feel, and because I know a lot of these contractors, I know how it is hurting them. But I'm saying if they used to do that with this practice and get away with it, these are new administration. You have to be more careful and how you're doing and make sure these things contracts that were given were signed. You understand what was the scope of works and you submit your claims for your payment of work that was done. And that is what I think the Chief Secretary is trying to do. So I'm just saying exercise patience and so on. And you have to move away from the thing where somebody in the government in Trinidad call in and say, pay this one, I give you this amount of money, ensure this one get paid and so on. That is not how government run. You don't run a government like that. Not a THA government or a national government like that. People have to be careful and deal with this thing quite seriously. I know some of the contractors are hurting. I know a lot of them, I know a lot of them. And I told them straight, I can't go against the law. If you've got a scope of work to do something, some of them had no scope of work, they were just doing things according to what somebody tell them to do, and they expect payment. Maybe that used to happen in the past. We have to change that. These are painful decisions, a painful pill of medicine that we have to swallow. We can't continue with this kind of anyhow, anything goes, or let me push that, or a prime minister or minister said, pay this man now. I said to somebody, pay this man. You don't operate like that.
And with that, well, Mr. Macfarlane, we have to wrap our session this morning. I want to thank you so much for being on with us. It was definitely a pleasure having you, and we hope that you can be back.
Anytime. As long as I have the opportunity to do so, I'll do that, man. We need fair comments and, justifiable arrangements and, do things legally and above board. You make a mistake, you're sorry for your mistake, you avoid it, you come out and you apologize and you say sorry. And move on. The world wouldn't end, the sky wouldn't fall in. We need to be big enough to know when we make mistakes. I made mistakes while I was a member of the assembly, like everybody else. Everybody make mistakes. But the important thing is to learn from your mistakes and see how you're moving forward. Don't let your mistakes or your failure keep you back. You have to move forward. You have 65,000 people in Tobago to see about. You have 1.4 million people in this country that we have to manage and to see and get through a number of things. Let's do that fairly, with equity, with compassion and reason and understanding, and realize that the people come first. Right.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Macfarlane. And viewers, we're not quite done because we've got a little bit more left on the program, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this break.
Tobago Update.